Hey everybody, it's your boy IconNick back at it again with the IconNick Things podcast. Today's episode is going to be more just by myself. I don't have a guest with me today. It's been a while. Some stuff came up and I haven't posted and I want to apologize. But what I'm going to talk about today was to kind of wrap up my first episode. When I first released, I talked about the first 5 episodes of the X-Men 97 show. I talked about up to episode 5 and just mentioning like all the iconic things for each episode. So I kind of want to wrap that up, and this will be the part 2 to that because the series has been completed. So to kind of move from that, episode 6 was the Life Death Part 2, or if I'm saying that right, I'm trying to remember the episode name, but I believe that one was pretty much explaining a little bit of what happened to Professor X. For those who don't know, who haven't watched the show before the show came back, at the end of like the series, Professor X allegedly dies, but an alien species who uses telepathy took him and tried to kind of like bring him back, kind of thing, because he was in a comatose state. I can't remember which episode that was, but yeah. So I think one of the most iconic things for that episode was for like the professor part, because it was kind of done into 2 parts because it was kind of going from Professor X to Storm. But we'll start with the first half. A lot of people don't know this, but that costume he wears was first introduced in the X-Men comics. This is the first time they use it's literally almost 1-to-1 with the comics. So it's literally almost the same. I think it's a little slight difference, but literally it's like a spitting image. And in the comic, he was introduced as like a different person until later he removes the helmet and stuff like that. The other thing was the whole kind of fast forwarding that, because he was kind of going to get his memories erased so he can marry the woman he loves, who is an alien. Her name escapes me, but moving forward, I think the fact that he was willing to do that for love, but then at the same time it's a part of who he is, right? So I think when he put everybody in the astral plane, because the man is a telepath and he's an extremely powerful one, and for some reason he forgot to use his mutant gift. Go figure. And he was kind of putting everyone to school and explaining how their alien species, how they used to put people down and make them think that they're above it, and man was schooling them and putting people in place who needed it. Another mention was, a lot of people don't notice, but there was another Summers in that episode. It was another Scott's. So to kind of give people understanding, Cyclops' parents were actually abducted, and then his mom was pregnant with their unborn child, and the aliens took the unborn child, super grew him, and he became one of the enforcers. He has kind of the same energy manipulation how Scott has. Cyclops, aka Scott, has his beam. I forget his name, but he has kind of the same power. It's kind of neat to see another Summers. Moving from that, I thought that would be an interesting thing to bring up. Yeah, I thought that was kind of the most iconic thing. And then how in the episode right at the end, he starts feeling all the deaths of the other mutants, even though the fact that he's not connected with Cerebral, but because he's so in tuned, I guess, with the astral plane, he senses a massive amount of death, right? And he was using his powers to check up on them, so that's why he never showed up, because I think he was I think it's time for them to not have their teacher anymore. But moving from that, and then he saw, I thought it was a great hint that that Gambit comes out as a skeleton and just kind of beams him, and then kind of hinting he's gonna come back, I think, as Death, but we'll talk about that a little bit more. I'll bring that up in a bit. But yeah, I think those were kind of like the good, like iconic things for that beginning part of the episode. The next part would be the whole Storm and Forge. So it leaves off to they fight that owl thing. I can't remember the name because I'm really bad with names. But pretty much from what I understand from when I brought it up in the first episode, it's like a manifestation of a spirit that feeds off negative emotions, right? And because, you know, Storm was going through a rut, it was like having a buffet with her. And then obviously like the little hint that Forge used like Doctor Strange magic for like, you know, to banish it like temporarily, and then gets hurt. And they have to find like a special plant to kind of heal him and all that stuff. And, you know, I didn't know she was suffering from claustrophobia. Like I didn't know Storm had that particular phobia. Now that I look at it, I kind of understand why, because she's in tune with like the weather and nature, and she's like everywhere she needs to be like free. But yeah, as she's fighting that owl thing, she goes through like a moment where it's just like she was the limit to herself to like not tapping into her powers, and then, you know, she lightning strikes the owl, and she gets a whole new costume, which I'm gonna be honest, I love the black costume with the crown. Don't get me wrong, I did like the white costume, but I do like how it kind of like suits like her style, I guess. Like I like the white costume when she has the mohawk a little bit, but I think it looks better with her long hair. That's just my preference, to be completely honest. But hey, everyone has their thing, and it kind of gave me like a whole like Sailor Moon vibe a little bit. But I thought that was really like iconic for her to do. Loved the new suit, and I loved how, I believe it was the episode after when they do her intro, she kind of like is in like her civvies, and then goes into like her new black suit with the crown. So yeah, those were kind of like the big points of like what I thought was iconic for, I believe that was episode 6, which was the Life Death Part 2. The next episode, which would be, I believe it was called Bright Eyes, which is episode 7. So this continues off to pretty much like the beginning of the episode. They're having a memorial, a funeral for Gambit, and, you know, all the major X-Men are there except for Rogue. My boy Kurt, that guy makes me feel like when he was talking about Gambit, and he kind of used like references of like gambling a little bit, made me a little sad. I was just like, man, makes you feel type of way. I gotta give the voice actor who does Kurt excellent to be, because Nightcrawler is one of my favorites. So there was that, and, you know, the X-Men are kind of feeling a type of way. I believe Jubilee starts feeling a type of way because Rogue's not there, and she was supposed to be like, you know, Gambit's like love of her life, and et cetera, et cetera. But she's dealing with his death differently than the other X-Men. They are sad, and so moving from that, I would say what Kurt said at the funeral was one of the great iconic points for that episode. And then moving from that, we have Rogue going on a rampage, and I'm talking about this lady is out for blood. As she like took an overdrive, she went to I believe General Ross. For those people who don't know him, this guy has been like hunting the Hulk for like ever, and he does become the Red Hulk technically. Spoilers, but most people do know that. And she breaks into prison, and then funny enough, she does a move for those people who have played the Marvel vs. Capcom games. I believe it was Marvel vs. Capcom 2 or Marvel vs. Street Fighter. I can't remember. She does like kind of a dive kick, and it reminds me of that. But also, it so reminds me of another show that's called Kamen Rider. For those people who don't know, Kamen Rider is like a Japanese Sentai, which is like another version of Power Rangers, and they do these like extra like super moves where it's like a jump kick. It just reminds me of that, and honestly, I love like the whole like reference to that. But I do love the reference of the fact that the whole fighting style of a lot of the mutants are kind of being taken from like the games and like how they were inspired. I love that, and I think that's why a lot of people like Cyclops now, because he was using those beams and stuff like that. But moving along, we do have a cameo in this, and we have Captain America. So I believe this version of Captain America was before the Civil War, because he's very by the book and stuff like that. And like, honestly, I thought Rogue was super petty because she wanted him to help her, and she just chucked this man's shield. And I'm like, damn, that's some pettiness. And she didn't just chuck it, she chucked it to the other side of the mountain. And then like Steve was looking at her as like, seriously? Like, it's not like he was gonna fight you, but hey, like that was some pettiness from her. I think the other part of that was she ends up going to Mexico, and they end up finding the doctor that gave his DNA to Sinister, and then finding out he's a organic sentinel, which is controlled by what's his name? The guy from like the beginning. His name escapes me, but I'll remember in a minute. Anyway, so yeah, the mutants don't know what they're doing, and then we have another cameo, which it's a second time appearing, which would be Cable, which is Scott and Jean's son, a lot older. So a lot of people were confused. He's technically not the Jean that was having the whole memory thing. He's the Jean that died, which was Madeline Pryor, if I'm saying her name right. And so, and he kind of like understands the whole like nonsense. So I thought like his intro with the EMP and tells him like, yeah, this is how you kind of get rid of them, and so on and so forth. So there was that, and then the episode kind of ends, if memory serves me correct. Oh, sorry. At the end of that episode, you have the man who's controlling the humanoid sentinels, and Magneto's alive. They don't explain how he's alive, but he's alive. But every other mutant that was there was dead because of that giant Sentinel 3-head thing. And so we go on to the next episode, which would be part 2 of that one. So if memory serves me correct, sorry guys, I just have like a little list, and I'm just having a brain fart. So long story short, Magneto, the fact that like, you know, Magneto was being captured by him. I can't remember his name. His name is so annoying. Captured by the villain, and he's like, you know, screw the humans, and he's like, from how I saw it, how I'm trying to understand it, I'm not like a pure scientist on this, but he goes to the North Pole and then uses his magnetism to screw with the entire Earth's magnetic pole. So I'm assuming, so like what he does is pretty much EMPs the entire planet. And it shut down all the bio sentinels, or the humanoid sentinels, and they're all like going to sleep. But here, by him doing that, he shuts down all like the nuclear plants, and pretty much, you know, Magneto's like, you know what, you guys pushed us, you guys didn't want to, you know, share the world and all that stuff, and I don't blame him. And it kind of brings up, like, I've been seeing memes about it, and it's like, yeah, Magneto was right. And it's a sad thing to kind of, like, you know, the fact that, like, you know, he he went through like a genocide, and like in a weird way, he's causing one, right? And in his eyes, it's like, this is the only way that these people are going to learn, right? Like, you know, he did it like Charles' way, and they don't want to do it, or like they didn't want to listen. And it's like one of those things, because it's like all about like ignorance, right? And we do face that in like the real world too, right? So, but we won't talk about the real world problems. Let's move. So moving from that, then him doing that, you also see a bunch of cameos, which we had Silver Samurai. Daredevil was an interesting one for me. Obviously, we had Spider-Man. I forgot to mention that. But we do get to see him in his Spidey suit and his civilian. You also see him with Mary Jane and Flash Thompson. So I don't know if, I hope they kind of bring his show back and kind of explain like they do, like they bring that like little part back. But it was interesting seeing them. I love the cameos. So pretty much this is all the last 3 episodes. So what ends up happening is the X-Men kind of like have to go fight what's his name? It's gonna bother me. Fight the villain. His name will like come to me. Bastion is his name. Sorry guys, I just had it started with a B and I just remember. So is it Bastion? I want to say it is. But so to give some context, so I'm gonna say this guy's name wrong, I swear. Bastion. I'm poorly mispronouncing this. So to give some context, I don't know if he was a human that gained a mutant power, because his dad was infected by a virus by another guy who's like a super sentinel named Nimrod. For those people who don't know, that's a whole nother complicated thing, because I just learned why he was called Nimrod and I thought it was funny as hell. But anyways, moving on. So Bastion, and I'm saying his name right, I believe I am. So ever since I was a kid, apparently like, you know, Professor Xavier actually tried to go help the kid, but like his mom stopped him, which another really messed up thing. Bastion made his mom into one of the Sentinels, which I thought was like, damn. I'm like, you did that to your mom, but not your dad, but we don't know what happened to his dad. Sorry guys, I'm just taking some water. So yeah. So he's like a technopath, but he's able to like hear technology, and like that's why he kind of like makes the Sentinels the way he is. Like they obey him. The other thing that I thought was really iconic that he did as he was fighting the X-Men. Oh wait, so before I do that, actually rewind here. Sorry, jumping the gun a little bit. When the X-Men have to go fight Magneto, they kind of like went back to their old costumes, since like the house was destroyed and stuff like that. To be completely honest, I'm not a big fan of Cyclops' old costume and Jean's old costume, to be completely honest. It's just a preference. I just wasn't a fan. So as they're fighting, they have like a different team. Cable gets an X-Men suit. He's fighting and all this stuff. Jean becomes the Phoenix, which is like the embers, whatever was left inside her body, she could tap into it. Cool. That would have been really useful, if you want my honest opinion. That could have been useful a lot sooner, but hey, this is one of those pacings of the show. Moving along from that, there was a scene where like Cable was fighting against Jean, and you know, because he was being under controlled by Sinister, and Sinister has implanted that since he was like a little baby, right? So like he's infected with his stupid virus. And honestly, it kind of like felt very sad when like Bastion was like going to him, he's like, how many times did you travel to that specific genocide point to like save your mom and save everything? And like you could see him, like he did it like, I think he said like 200 times. And I was just like, God damn. And he had to watch his mom die 200 times. That would break a person normally. So yeah, that was insane. I thought those were really good. Morph turning into the Hulk and Jean using her her telepath powers to kind of like ricochet him around. I thought that was really cool. What else happened? If memory serves me correct, there was that. So after they fight Bastion, they kind of like try to get the one up, and then Bastion did some like crazy nonsense where he goes up to Cable and rips this guy's metal arm and then kind of absorbs the technology to kind of be like, you know, the future incarnate or death incarnate, whatever you want to call it. And he goes up to where Magneto was in his space rock, and then we cut to the fact that like Professor X is trying to like use Magneto's powers either forcibly or get him to use it to fix the Earth, and that causes some issues. Honestly, I thought Onslaught was going to come. For those who you don't know, Onslaught is there's like Magneto's like evil energy kind of gets like into Professor X, which creates this entity called Onslaught. He's like an extremely powerful telepath. It's a whole thing. But I think he might show up for season 2 for those, just my honest opinion. So there was that. Don't even get me started. Magneto did some like ruthless stuff to Wolverine, and everyone's like, oh my God, he got his adamantium ripped right out of him. That it literally, the images that you see him doing it is literally a majority, like 99% of right off the comic page. So that was like intense. I've got to say that's up there. Anyways, moving on to the Bastion part, going to the spaceship and trying to stop the X-Men, and you know they're fighting him, and like Scott does his like mega beam level 3 ultra from like Marvel vs. Capcom, where he does like the arms, the X arms, and just blasts. Great. I loved it. I thought they were gonna like, you know, they were all gonna die and all that stuff. And yeah, Bastion, obviously, he looks like he dies at the end because of the explosion of like the gravity core thing. Weird way to go out, but whatever. And then out of nowhere, the X-Men that were on the ship, which would be like Storm, Beast, Wolverine, Morph, Jean, Cyclops, Magneto, and Professor X, they get blasted through time, which kind of explains a lot. One group is like in the near like really into the future, which is Scott and Jean, and they meet young Cable, and like the group for that. Then it cuts to the other X-Men who actually meet a younger version of Apocalypse. And I cannot pronounce his Egyptian name. I'm really bad at pronunciation, but I know it's Apocalypse. So I think what's going to happen is they're going to be kind of the reason why he becomes Apocalypse in a sense. And they kind of figure that out. And yeah, so no one knows that. And then it cuts to like present day. Bishop comes out of nowhere and talks to Forge like they're friends, and then says like, oh, you know, we're friends in the future kind of thing. And then he tells them like the X-Men are like lost in time, and it's just like, it's just another day for being an X-Men, because they go through some serious stuff in like the comics. Cutting back to the last big iconic thing, I would think would be the present day Apocalypse going to Genosha and going to the spot where Remy kind of like deceased, and he sees one of his cards all burnt. I feel like he's going to be a horseman when Apocalypse is going to come for season 2. So I think he's going to be the Horseman of Death, which it does happen in the comics. I have my theories of who Apocalypse is going to pick to be his horseman. A lot of my friends say I have a weird aspect of it because I've never like really depth into the X-Men comics. I've more read like the single issues, like the Wolverines, the Deadpools, and I'm still getting into like reading like the main X-Men lines. So moving forward, honestly, I want to say it, and I'm going to say it now. So I think Gambit is going to be Death, and I think Wolverine is going to be another horseman because technically he's in a coma and he's healing. I think he's going to become War, and Apocalypse is kind of going to be the guy to put his adamantium in him. I think he's also going to take Storm. So I feel like he's going to have like a full X-Men team, to be completely honest. So I think he's going to take Storm, and she's going to be... so I know there's Death, War, Pestilence, and Famine. I think Storm might be Famine because she can like turn crops to nothing because she controls the weather. And I don't know who would be Pestilence. Like Pestilence is like really weird. I think it's just going to be like, I want to say Morph in a sense, but not so much. It could be a random, but I think those three for sure, because I think it would be like an interesting, because he would have like serious powerhouses, because you don't see those characters when they kind of jumped into the time, because like Logan's missing, Morph's missing, Storm's missing. So I feel like those three are going to become maybe Horsemen. Who knows? That's just my honest opinion. I think my theory is kind of like interesting because I do think it kind of fits with their power set and kind of like their personalities. Because like obviously using Wolverine as an example, I know Wolverine becomes Death in the comics, but I think with the way that the show does it, I think he would be a great version of War. Since like if they're kind of going with like the savage Wolverine where he doesn't have his adamantium and his mutant gene kind of like goes into overdrive because the adamantium was keeping his mutation at bay because of the constant healing. So he kind of becomes more animalistic looking. So I think like Apocalypse is going to try to find him, and he's with Morph, and you know he's going crazy and stuff like that. So like I feel like he's going to recruit them in a way where it's just like, oh, I could save him, put him back to the earth, but he has to be one of my horsemen, right? So, and then going from there, and I think Storm too, it kind of suits her because her power set is to control the weather, which the weather plays a big factor in you know, crops and stuff like that. So I think Famine would suit her a little bit. So like I feel like if she does get like, I don't know if Apocalypse is going to give them upgrades in their mutant abilities, but I know he's going to bring back Gambit somehow. He's friggin' Apocalypse. But I think my theory is kind of like interesting and sound, to be honest. I like to hear what people think about it, but that's my thing. And from what I'm understanding, it does look like we might be getting 2 villains for season 2. Season 2 cannot come any sooner. But yeah, like X-Men show, I gotta give it like a 9 out of 10, 9.5. It loses like the 0.5 because of the Jubilee episode, but whatever. We digress, as I always say. But yeah, highly recommend it. Great show. So moving from that, yeah, that's my theory about the whole Horseman thing. I feel we're still probably going to get Onslaught. I think he might be like an obstacle they probably have to face, maybe through like time. And then maybe Onslaught's the reason why Apocalypse becomes Apocalypse, I think. That would be kind of like an interesting way to go about it too. But yeah, not much more to talk about that because I want to wrap the part 2 of the X-Men talk. But yeah, I think we're going to end the pod like this today. Thank you for listening. But yeah, if you guys have any topics or questions, feel free to shoot them out to me. I'm also on Instagram. We'll be posting some questions and stuff like that. More on that than I could talk about on the next episode, which I'm going to have a guest, another comic book guest. Hopefully that everyone's schedule works and my schedule doesn't change. But yeah, let's end the pod like that. Don't forget, find the iconic things in you and in everything else. But yeah, this is your boy IconNick ending the show.